Welcome to Global Therapy Talks, a digital platform that hosts experts, specialists to dive into conversation that drive change, ranging from international relations, diplomacy, sustainable development, among other topics. At Global Therapy Talks, we dive into conversation that drive change. And tonight, we are hosting a guest speaker called Mr. Fubu Mike holds a master's degree in development studies from Lund University, Sweden. Apparently, is also on his PhD track in Sweden. And tonight, we shall be discussing matters regarding sustainable development goals. What should the government or what should the governments do in order to achieve Agenda 2030? And what is the most compelling sustainable development goal that government should focus on? And then why are sustainable development goals equally important to member states of the United Nations? All this shall be wrapped up through the conversation that we shall be having with Mr. Fubu, based in Sweden. Dear viewers, join me as we welcome Mr. Fubu Mike on the platform. Tonight we shall be holding remote interviews, and in absence of my colleague Mike Ochan, I'll be taking the lead to make sure that we hold this remote interview. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're watching from. Mr. Nguvu, Mike, welcome to the show. This is Global Therapy Talks, a digital platform whereby we host experts like you to dive into conversations that are very change. Ranging from diplomacy, international relations, to sustainable development goals. And we are quite very happy on behalf of my friend who is not on the call right now, but surely will be on the call some other day. We are quite very happy that you spared some time and you appeared on the platform amidst your busy schedule. Well, unless when you have anything maybe to our viewers who will be viewing this video after it's been recorded, I would like to put it onto your attention that this video will be recorded and later be uploaded to our digital platform. I hope this is well with you.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can say is thank you for inviting me to your platform. I mean, thank you for appreciating my space or the space that or the knowledge that I can share and the experiences. So yeah, thank you very much, and we're looking forward to a fruitful discussion, and hopefully the viewers will pick one or two things that they can agree or disagree with us. So
yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Fogo, for this wonderful session that we shall be having this afternoon, both in Sweden and in Uganda. Maybe to go straight, because the topic for today, you well know aware that we shall be discussing what they mean to sustainable development goals, and we are really very happy that you, a scholar, or you are an expert into sustainable development goals with a master's degree, and also you're on your PhD track. We really appreciate your knowledge, and we believe that it will impact the viewers that will be, viewing this video. As we are both aware that sustainable development goals were launched in the year 2015, that replaced Millennium Development Goals. As an expert in this area, why do you think sustainable development goals are important for global development? As our first question, yeah. You get me?
Oh, I mean, yes, I can hear you. I mean, it's breaking here and there, but I think I get the gist of your question.
Okay.
And I mean, like sustainable development goals. Like first to really answer, I'll try to go back slightly to the definition. And I mean, like it's basically a development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations. Like for me, so I'll be a bit skeptical. So hopefully the viewers will understand. I mean, like it sounds good on paper, but personally, it's one of the definitions that I feel it's maybe a bit hypocritical in its phrasing.
Yeah.
And even though, I mean, it's even maybe the way it's translated in the responses of it from the important players, I mean, something maybe that we can get to into later.
Yeah.
But I mean, like sustainable development goals, of course, they are important if you look at them on paper. They say we need no poverty, zero hunger, quality education,
Yeah.
gender equality.
Yeah.
But from the definition itself, I think it's more, it has a very weak emphasis on systematic change.
Okay.
I think it's more of a transformational definition of sustainable development. And, it does not really challenge the dominant socio-economic system that contributes to this sustainability. I mean, such as market-driven economies. And there is one example that I usually like to give to colleagues. I mean, like we say, we have to achieve development of today, but also not affecting the livelihoods of the future generation.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, why are we trying to save the future generation if we can't save the generation we have now?
Okay.
So, like, that's one question that always comes up to me. Are we even sure that that future generation will be there? I mean, right now we have got countries which are nuclear powers, and they have presidents who have, I mean, one who's unstable and one we don't know how to categorize him. If they decide to use a nuclear bomb today, maybe we won't even have a future.
Yeah.
But on paper, I think it is good, uh, at least that there is some thought, or there is a recognition that, of course, we live in a world that has finite resources, and there's a lot of disparity between different classes of people, the wealthy people and the people living below the poverty line. So in that sense, there's a recognition that something has to be done. But is this the right way to phrase it? Maybe that's a discussion for another day.
Okay.
But I mean, in terms of recognition and also pinpointing areas that need improvement. So yeah, that's one of the areas that I think it is definitely important.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for that wonderful submission. I mean, maybe to come up with a similar question around that. Do you think it's much better we think about the future generation, just because you mentioned about like, the future, rather the present generation matters more? Do you think that more emphasis should be put on the present generation, and then we leave the future to minds about its own business?
Not exactly the way you've put it, but of course, I think emphasis should be on the current generation because it is only the current generation that can help prepare for the future generation.
Yeah.
But if you leave most of the current generation in a precarious situation, I mean, like right now we have the biggest famine now happening in Sudan. There is a big humanitarian crisis, and on the other end of the spectrum, we have people who are planning to go and set up new lifestyles on the moon. So
Okay.
you can see where the difference is, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So I mean, like we need to have emphasis on the current generation, but it has to be inclusive. Not only, I mean, like you and me, we could, by many standards, consider ourselves elite. So not only the elites who can have access to the education or access to the information, but we also need, I mean, like even the people who don't have access to formal like education and knowledge, but I think they still have the experience of the environments they live in. I
Okay.
think it's something that we need to bring everyone on board. People with ideas, we bring them on board. People with no resources, we see how we can stretch the little resources we have to try to make sure each and every person comes on board.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Unless you've given an extra explanation that puts light to your submission. But as an expert in sustainable development goal with a master's, would like to
Mm.
pose a question to you. Which of the 17 SDG goals do you find more comparing, and why? Which one do you think that the world should put more emphasis on? Yeah.
I mean, like from like not really disregarding any of them, but I think all of them are important. I mean, one reason being they uh, definitely rely on each other. I mean,
Mhm.
to be achieved. If we look at quality education,
Yeah.
gender equality, you need clean water and sanitation. Those are things, I mean, that rely on each other. But also looking at my area of more expertise, which is politics and democracy,
Yeah.
then it's no surprise that what I would pick as the MVP, as I would call it, if that's a correct term to use on an intellectual podcast. Yeah, but I think I would pick on, I think it's sustainable development goal number 16.
Yeah.
That's peace, justice, and strong institutions.
Yeah. Sure.
Like if I had to pick on one that we needed to focus on, I think I would pick on that. And I feel like it is one of the foundations of all other goals because I mean, for each and all of these goals to be achieved,
Yeah.
I think there is need to be political will or leadership will.
Okay.
That it has to be deliberate. So we need to have strong institutions that enable, peace. And of course, there has been countless research that says without peace and effective governance, I mean, areas like education, health, or poverty, it becomes impossible to achieve.
Yeah.
We have examples now. Just moments ago, we are talking about Sudan, and
Yeah.
of course, without peace, like all of these sustainable development goals, like they cannot simply be applied in that context. And
Yeah.
even if the conflict is not only in Sudan, but it has spillover effects. You have refugees going to other countries, countries having to stretch their resources
Yeah.
to help the incoming refugees.
Yeah.
So I think for me, that is what I would call my MVP. And not only because it ensures peace, but also when you talk of justice, I mean, of course, it will reach out to maybe
Yeah.
protect the vulnerable populations, maybe in terms of human rights,
Yeah.
but also justice and accountability. And you and me being from Africa, we know how much things like corruption,
Yeah.
like what damage corruption can cause. Uh, we have, and I remember I was listening to one great Pan Africanist. I think it was PLO Lumumba.
Yeah.
I mean, who was actually uh, equaling corruption to crimes against humanity, and I fully support that because the impacts of corruption they're just too much and too big to measure.
Yeah.
That you don't see it, you don't see it directly, but when you trace the potential impacts,
Yeah.
like that's something that has killed a lot of people. It has killed a lot of democracies. It has, I mean, like the implications of it are beyond what a lot of people can comprehend.
Yeah.
So that's why I feel if we have strong institutions and yeah, we have peace and justice and strong institutions. That's for me is one of the foundation of the development goals.
Okay. Thank you so much for that wonderful submission. But still, rotating around Sustainable Development Goal 16, and I was reading through your profile, and I saw that you're doing some research around sub-Saharan
Mm.
region. Africa is one of the country. Africa is one of the continents that is facing conflicts that is facing weaker institution, just like the way you mentioned about like to have sustainable
Mhm.
development goals to be achieved, we need to have strong institutions. But if you look at down here in Africa, we face weak institutions. I mean, if you go to countries like Central African Republic, if you mentioned about South Sudan, these are nations that are facing with conflicts. I mean, as an expert who
Mhm.
studied sustainable development goals, in your opinion, in your view, I mean, what should be done to ensure that this goal is achieved? Yeah.
Mhm.
Hello.
Mhm. Mm, yeah, I can hear you. I mean, the line is breaking a bit, but I think I still got your question. I mean, I think there is not really one solution that we could call a panacea to all these conflicts. Of course, there are a lot of socio-economic differences in different countries. But one of the things, I mean, is linked to SDG 16. I think it also, I also think, like, even in terms of leadership and Africa to be specific, since this is the case we're talking on, like, there has to be some sort of peer review among East African leaders.
Okay.
I mean, like, we see African leaders, they meet, whether it's at COMESA or ECOWAS, or they meet SADC, or they meet at the African Union. Do they really have a mechanism where they have a peer review and tell, I mean, exchange notes between all these presidents? Say, why are you doing this to your people? Why can't you do this to your people? Why can't you do this? I mean, we have examples. What was the name of that church in France that got banned? I think it was a Notre Dame, or I'm not sure. I'm not sure of the name, but that church got banned. And we had the president of Benin.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, it should have been the president of Benin. He donated $20 million towards the building of that of a church in France.
Yeah.
And Benin is not by any means a rich country.
Yeah.
So like it's these things that we look at. It's the lack of leadership. I mean, like we need to have deliberate ambitions,
Okay.
deliberate actions, and deliberate accountability. And also, there was now a case of, I think it was Niger, there was that coup d'etat, then ECOWAS was reacting.
Yeah.
But if they had this peer review, uh, like when the people were the people's rights were being violated, or the wealth from the country was being driven out of the country,
Yeah.
none of the people in ECOWAS talked to their friend, hey, look at what's happening to your people. These people might revolt against you one day. Why
Yeah.
are you doing this? Why can't you do something different? And when the people rise up, and now they just went and put ahead sanctions. So I feel it's a lack of accountability among states, a lack of peer review amongst each other,
Yeah.
and to some extent, I would say interference. But again, I don't want to emphasize so much on interference because I believe as Africans, we also have our own agency.
Yeah.
Like we make our own decisions. We have the people who've been educated. Yourself, you've been exposed. You've been educated. You're someone who can put a voice, and the experts should listen to you. Like politicians should not only make decisions for political expedience. And unfortunately, this is what happens now. And eventually, it leads to all these ongoing conflicts.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that wonderful submission once again. Maybe also to proceed further in a global perspective, to put it on the government, how can governments better align their policies with SDGs to promote sustainable development goals? I mean, how can government, from a global perspective, better align their policies to make sure that these sustainable development goals are achieved, or sustainable development goal 16 is achieved? Yeah, as an expert.
But I think it is a number of things that I would suggest that governments would do. And I mean, and especially that you've put it from a global perspective. Now we live in a global village.
Okay.
Like we have got different areas of the world that is advancing. Let's say in terms of technology, we have Europe or the Americas or China.
Yeah.
We can learn from how they're advancing in that technology, but how are you going to share that technology so that you ensure all countries that find it harder to acquire that technology so that they can use it? And like if you look, not only talking about SDG 16, but if you look at now the climate crisis, I
Yeah.
mean the most affected places are the least contributors to climate crisis, and they're the ones with weaker economies. And part of it, I give an example of my country where we had a drought,
Yeah.
but we don't have the mechanism to predict the drought. So you find that farmers would have already planted, and then when you have a drought, they planted the crop that's not drought resistant. So
Yeah.
of course that will have a big impact on how much yield they will have, on what that will have. But if we have the technology from these countries that are technologically advanced, how are they going to share that technology? Like, how are you going to deliberately ensure that the resources that you have, you share not only the knowledge, but also you share the resources. Because by all accounts, I mean, I've had a few instances with colleagues
Yeah.
where some even suggest that actually these SDGs, especially when you talk about climate sustainability, is very much unfair in Africa.
Yeah.
It's like when you go to a birthday party and your friends have been eating cake,
Yeah.
and the moment you arrive at the birthday party of cake, because then we'll starve. When they ate the whole other piece without you. So
Yeah.
like this is where Africa is. Now when we want to develop, and say, no, but you can't develop the same way we developed because we're going to do this damage to the world. Okay, maybe that's so. But then help us develop without putting so much damage to the world. Then we need a lot of climate financing. And if you see, I think the latest COP29, a lot of countries were upset because the pledges that were made towards climate financing were not met. So they had to, they had to compromise for a smaller amount. So like these are the things that deliberately I think need cooperation.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Thank you so much for that presentation and submission. We will appreciate the Global Teleport Talks. But our last question, we believe that you're a very busy person and you have a lot of stuff that you need to.
Yeah, yeah, no problem.
Yeah, sure. We
Mm.
have my last question actually goes as an expert. Do you think Agenda 2030 can be achieved within
Mm.
the year 2030, especially if you relate that to
Uh,
the African continent? Do you think we're on the right track of achieving this Agenda 2030?
uh, Unfortunately, I mean, I would hate to disappoint a lot of optimists, but unfortunately, I don't think we will. Mm. And especially if you look at it from the African perspective, I think it's like we just climb on these agendas. We are not really part of the table that sets the agenda. They
Yeah.
set the agenda, and then so well, I think we Africa can do this. And I think that's where part of the problem is from my perspective. Like you look, there was some talk of degrowth, and I mean, like even the term itself, I
Yeah.
think brought a lot of skepticism. So, okay, I mean, how do you employ degrowth to a country or to a place that has not experienced growth in the first place?
Yeah.
So, like, there's skepticism first from the street level. People want to practice that, and also, like, so many systems have to really put in place. I think these are systems that take quite a long time.
Yeah.
And if we look at 2030 is now 5 years left.
Yeah.
If we look at, can we really do that in 5 years? And now we have one of the biggest contributors to global gas emissions, the USA. Just next year, they'll be swearing in a president who's not even a believer in climate change. So, what impact is that going to have in achieving Agenda 2030? Probably that's a very big impact. So, and he'll be there until 2029, until maybe after 2029 or is it 2028? Maybe in the last 3 years, something drastic happens.
Yeah.
But like I said in the beginning, like setting these goals, ambitious as they are, but it's a good thing because we realize that something needs to be done. So like I take optimism from that. Okay, it's at least we've realized something needs to be done. What that needs to be, I think that's something that should take, of course, experts like yourself and myself and other experts who have the knowledge, scientific knowledge, and ensure that politicians are also held accountable. They don't make decisions for political expediency. Again, going back to Trump, who says he's here to make America great again. If it's good for American business, it doesn't matter what it does to the rest. So, but if we don't hold such leaders accountable through civil society, through citizens, then in terms of Agenda 2030, I think it's a bit bleak. I think would be shooting ourselves in the foot to claim that we are going to reach that target.
Oh, nice. Thank you so much. I'm just wondering the process that we've been taking as African countries actually to make sure that we achieve that Agenda 2030. But just like the way you say that that is the near the corner, and a lot has to be done. And that one, at least we refer to African content that we have a lot that we need to, to put on board to make sure that we attain this. But also to come up with another question around that. Do you think other countries or from other continents like Europe, do you think they've achieved or they are about to achieve the Agenda 2030?
No, I mean these SDGs, they are global. So I mean, you can't really, as a country, only say in isolation we've achieved, but the rest of you have not achieved. So I don't think any country, it would be wise for any of them to claim that. But then on the other hand, like we have a lot of countries claiming now we are going towards net zero emissions, but others argue there is a lot of greenwashing. I mean, if you look, the biggest polluters, the USA and China, and I give an example of China now. I mean, I think China closed so many coal mines in China, but what did it end up doing? It opened almost the same amount of coal mines in Africa. So, like, if you look at it in the country itself, China, yeah, we are reducing our coal mines, but what are you doing? Yeah, we are opening them in Africa. Does that do anything? No, it doesn't. And ironically, even in Sweden, where I am now, and I think there was a report, I'm not sure exactly how long it was. I think it was actually Uganda or Kenya.
Yeah.
Now, where there were a lot of complaints because they had to buy a piece of land to make up for the carbon emissions that they make, and they wanted to create a forest. But what that did was it was displacing the indigenous people who live there because they use that piece of land for survival. So would Sweden say we are achieving that Agenda 2030 because we are emitting less greenhouse gases, whilst we are displacing indigenous people in another country? I mean, I don't think that would be a fair claim, right? Like it would be one-sided. So I think even though we did not create this mess as a whole continent,
Yeah.
but I think fixing it requires a whole continent, and no country can come out in isolation and say we are reaching this source, the others are not. Because many of the countries, I think, that can say that are the country that has created the mess for small countries like yours and mine.
Yeah.
That their emissions are very tiny compared to the countries that are now would claim they are very close to achieving that. So I don't think
Yeah.
we're going to achieve it.
Nice. Thank you so much for your wonderful time, Mr. Fubu. It's really been a nice session with you. We really appreciate the time you've given us, and hopefully, maybe in the future, at least we shall reach out again to you. Hopefully, in the future, and we expound more.
Yeah, definitely.
Common goal.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, sure. We'll appreciate. Maybe if you have anything to say to the viewers, your last word to say to the viewers, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, firstly and lastly, again, thank you to you and your colleagues in absentia
Yeah,
for giving me the opportunity to have a discussion with you. And I mean, I'm really excited about your podcast and I'm looking forward to its growth. And of course, I'll be more than willing when time allows if you want to have more talks. And I can only urge viewers to follow you keenly because not only do I know you personally, but I've also been a big admirer of yours and
yeah,
see the journey that you're taking.
yes,
So I would encourage viewers to tune in and listen to any programs that you have in the future as well.
yeah, sure. Thank you so much. This is the Global Teleport Talks. It's been wonderful. My name once again is Kenneth Mondo, and we host experts like you to dive into conversation that drive change. Thank you so much for your time. See you until next time. Bye bye.
Yeah, all right, thank you.